My beautiful people. Today we got another one. I don't do any talking through the reactions anymore, so I say everything in the beginning. Go check out those YouTube shorts. My music is on there. I love y'all. Hope y'all having a good day. Let's check out a little bit of gang activity today. This gang was so crazy that Bloods and Crips had to click up together, nigga. I said, what? What's going on? So let's see what the hell is going on, y'all.
And we got all types of things out here.
In Watts, the biggest gang is Grape Street.
It would be the Grape Streets and the Bonnie Hunters.
Okay,
those are like two of the powerhouses. The ones.
You know, it's no secret how dangerous gangs can be, and
DP or money? DP or money? Y'all saw who that was. Was it DP or was it money?
the brutal things they get involved in. But have you heard of a gang so ruthless, so powerful, that even the two most powerful gangs had to join forces just to go up against them? That's exactly the case with the Grape Street Crips. This gang has earned a reputation for bringing chaos and mayhem wherever they go. Let's take a closer look at their story.
Show me love, all the greats show me love.
So picture this. It's the 1950s and Los Angeles is on the rise. The city is booming, becoming one of the most prosperous places in the country. Add to the fantastic weather and beautiful beaches, and it was basically a paradise. It was so appealing that many people from the southern United States wanted to be a part of it. African Americans in particular saw LA as a utopia compared to the harsh realities they were facing in the South. So hundreds of thousands of people moved to LA hoping for a better life. But when they got there, they found a very different reality waiting for them. Instead of being welcomed with open arms, they faced a lot of hostility. Back then, LA was about 95% white, and the local population was not thrilled about the demographic changes. They did everything they could to make life difficult for the new residents. They even passed laws to ensure that African Americans could only live south of Central Avenue, which is how the area known as South Central came to be. This law essentially barred them from living in 80% of Los Angeles County, putting them at a significant disadvantage compared to those who could move to more upscale neighborhoods.
The one plugin that I want to showcase here is this bad boy. It's called the God Particle. The only thing that you really have.
They were pushed to the fringes of LA society. South Central, Watts, and Compton were areas with large wartime housing complexes that were later converted into public housing units. Watts, in particular, had the highest concentration of public housing on the West Coast, with one out.
So with that being said, a 95% ratio of a white community. What did this white community do to that 5% of black people and other races? They tortured them. They sicked their dogs on them. They killed them. What did the people of those communities do? They created a group called the Crips. Now, if you want to blame somebody for all this back-to-back killings, it will be you whites. Even though we are way past that. This is 2024. But if you wanted to know the origins of gangs and why they started, who's to blame? It's you, Chrissy.
Out of every 3 residents living in these units. The way it worked was that residents would pay 1/3 of their income in rent. So if you made $100 a month, your rent would be $33. However, half of the public housing residents in Watts were unemployed, meaning many of them lived rent-free. Over the years, these areas became hotbeds for all kinds of crime and danger. Things just kept getting worse and worse.
We have no way to get our frustration out, because we're already at the bottom. You know, what else could we do?
LA became a hub of resistance against the authorities. NWA came along and changed music forever, putting the city on the map in a new way. But today, we're not talking about being straight out of Compton. We're focusing on the Jordan Downs projects, also known as Grape Street. The residents of Grape Street primarily came from 2 places, Memphis and New Orleans. Many of them eventually moved back to the South, bringing the Grape Street culture with them. That's why you can find Grape Street neighborhoods in places like Memphis, with rappers like Block Boy JB and NLE Choppa, representing the Grape. In LA, Grape Street became one of the most feared gangs around. They gained a notorious reputation and had beef with just about everyone. It's really Grape Street versus the world. So Grape Street Crips are pretty easy to spot in LA because they rock purple, setting them apart from everyone else. One of their most famous members is the rapper 03 Greedo. But did you know that Tyrese Gibson grew up in that neighborhood too? It's not just their clothing that makes them unique, it's also the way they talk. Even after all these years, their southern accents and slang have been passed down through generations. Grape Street is like one big tight-knit family, all connected through the streets and the color purple. Whenever they show up at an event, they roll in deep, like 200 people deep. And their reputation? Let's just say they're known for causing quite a bit of chaos. Let me take you back to August 11th, 2002, a day that went down in infamy. LA's biggest hip-hop radio station was hosting its annual Summer Jam concert. The lineup was incredible, with Nelly and Snoop Dogg set to headline the event. Naturally, 15,000 people poured into the venue, excited for an amazing night of music. But Grape Street had other plans. You could spot them easily with their purple headbands, jerseys, and those super long jean shorts that were all the rage back then. The Grape Street crew had every intention of ruining Summer Jam for everyone. They got into a massive altercation right in the front row. Things escalated quickly and security just couldn't handle them. It got so bad that they had to call for backup to finally get them off the stage. By the time order was restored, it was too late. Everyone had already left and they had to cancel Summer Jam altogether. And mind you, the night had barely even started. All 15,000 attendees walked away empty-handed, their night ruined. This incident was a major turning point. The music industry collectively decided they wanted nothing to do with Grape Street after that night. Their bad reputation has stuck around ever since. 03 Greedo himself has said that nobody in the industry wants to work with them. Grape Street has left a significant mark on LA, making them one of the most feared gangs, though certainly not by everyone. Which brings us to the Nickerson Gardens. Welcome to Nickerson Gardens, the largest public housing complex west of the Mississippi. This place is massive, with 156 buildings and over 1,000 units. Just a 5-minute drive from Jordan Downs. Nickerson Gardens, like Jordan Downs, was initially developed as temporary housing back in the 1940s. Over the years, though, it became a stronghold for the Bloods, specifically the bounty hunters, also known as BHB. In Nickerson Gardens, all you see is red because that's the Bloods' color. The one thing you definitely won't see there is purple because that's the color of their rivals, the Crips. The rivalry between Grape Street Crips and the bounty hunters in Nickerson Gardens goes way back and has never really stopped. It's been a constant battle, a street war that's shaped the lives of everyone in those neighborhoods. The Nickerson Gardens has its fair share of representation in the music world. For instance, J-Rock, one of Kendrick Lamar's biggest artists on TDE, hails from there. YG's artist D3 also calls Nickerson Gardens home. Back in the day, the neighborhood was represented by the rap group OFTB. If you go back to 2009, you can even find videos of Kendrick Lamar rapping in the projects.
They homie said they was a few times, which is too many times I lied to you. They telling a lie. The only time I lie in the booth is when I sleep in it.
You could say Kendrick Lamar was always good in the hood. These days, he's giving back to the community by holding a free concert right in Nickerson Gardens every year. But the rivalry between BHB and Grape Street has been brutal, claiming many lives on both sides. Let's dive into a particularly intense chapter of this story. First, let's set the scene. Nickerson Gardens and PJ Watts, also known as Imperial Courts, were allies at the time, running together. It was September 23, 2012 at around 2:30 p.m. The weather was perfect, a sunny day in LA. Marvin Vital was just chilling outside with his girlfriend in Jordan Downs when a car suddenly approached. Bam! Marvin got hit and was rushed to the hospital with a huge bandage wrapped around his head. Luckily, the bullet did not go through and he ended up being okay. While Marvin was at the hospital, LAPD showed up at his bedside ready with their notepads to ask him questions, but Marvin wasn't having any of it. He got furious, ripped off his medical equipment, and stormed out of the hospital in his gown. He went straight back home to Grape Street, head still wrapped in bandages. As he arrived, neighbors heard him shouting, "I'm gonna get them back." Marvin linked up with two of his Grape Street associates, Kevin Phillips and Christopher Ladd. They were all fuming and determined to make a statement. Instead of renting a car, they decided to use Phillips' girlfriend's minivan, a blue Chrysler Pacifica. They waited for the sun to set, and at 7:15 p.m., it was go time. They headed down to Nickerson Gardens, driving around until they spotted Flipside, a legendary rapper from OFTB. Flipside was outside with his girlfriend when the minivan approached. The guys in the van called him over, and Flipside, sensing something was off, turned around and ran towards the apartments. But it was too late. They jumped out of the minivan and fired multiple fatal shots at him. 4 bullets were recovered from Flipside's body and 11 shell casings from a 9mm handgun, along with 2 casings from a 45mm handgun, were found at the scene. After the shooting, they hopped back into the minivan and headed over to Imperial Courts. They cruised around looking for PJ Watts members. That's when they found Marquis Sprider, who was visiting his girlfriend Trisha McQueen. They hopped back into the minivan and headed over to Imperial Courts. They cruised around looking for PJ Watts members. That's when they found Marquis Sprider, who was visiting his girlfriend Trisha McQueen at her apartment. Minivan, sensing something was off, turned around and ran towards the apartments, but it was too late. They jumped out of the minivan and fired multiple fatal shots at him. 4 bullets were recovered from Flipside's body and 11 shell casings from a 9mm handgun, along with 2 casings from a 45mm handgun were found at the scene. After the shooting, they hopped back into the minivan and headed over to Imperial Courts. They cruised around looking for PJ Watts members. That's when they found Marquis Sprider, who was visiting his girlfriend Trisha McQueen at her apartment in Imperial Courts. When the night was winding down, Brider stepped outside of McQueen's apartment and suddenly gunshots rang out. McQueen looked out the window and saw a man getting into the minivan. One guy climbed in through the sliding door and another got in the front passenger seat. McQueen saw one of the men tuck a weapon into his waistband before they drove off, but not before shouting, "F you, this is Grape." McQueen ran outside and found Brider had been shot 6 times, including a fatal shot to the head. About an hour later, Marvin and his crew were still driving around Watts in that same blue minivan. A police officer noticed a taillight was out and pulled them over. That's when it all came crashing down for them. They didn't even bother hiding anything. All the evidence was in plain sight. They didn't run or try to ditch anything. They seemed resigned to face the consequences. It's clear that Grape Street was on a mission that day. Ultimately, all 3 of the Grape Street Crips were sent into life without the possibility of parole, plus 25 years to life for
whether you're brown, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're a biker, a part of the 1%, whether you're a Crip or Blood, MS-13. How many people have we lost to pointless bullcrap? Pointless death. Bright young men with futures ahead of them. But death comes to everybody. You live by the gun, you die by the gun.
The gun. On a flip side, a prominent figure in the community and mentor to young artists like J-Rock sent shockwaves through Nickerson Gardens. Flipside had OG status and was just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The loss of Flipside was not just a blow to the BHB, it was a loss for the entire community. He was a guiding force for the younger generation trying to make it out of the gang life through music. The folks at Nickerson Gardens were devastated and determined to retaliate. On Halloween in 2012, the tensions between Nickerson Gardens and Grape Street were at an all-time high. That night, Nickerson Gardens' crew slid through Grape Street territory and shot 3 people. Thankfully, everyone survived, but the Nickerson guys felt like their mission was not accomplished. They wanted to send a stronger message.
homie, gang. Whoever went on those 3 missions, bro, I bet you 100%, 90%, the same 3 people went on those same 3 missions, right? They all need to stick to just making money for the clique, bro. Make money for the group. You just need to sit down, homie. What? You went 3 for 0? 0 for 3? However you want to put it. You didn't get not 1 out of 3?
Fast forward 6 days.
Do you want to do more than just
days to November 6, 2012, it's another day in the neighborhood and 12 people are just hanging out on Grape Street when a black car pulls up behind the projects. The men jump out yelling, "What set you from?" Before anyone could respond, shots were fired. The scene was chaotic and the aftermath even more so. LAPD, looking to show they were on top of things, arrested a man named Damien from Nickerson Gardens based on a social media post. They didn't have any real evidence, but they needed to make a show of effort. This is something DAs often do when there's a headline-grabbing incident. They make arrests to calm the public. They threw Damien into a cell with an undercover cop, hoping he'd spill some beans. Sure enough, the undercover played his part, asking casual questions at first, then diving into specifics. Damien, feeling comfortable, started talking. He detailed the whole operation, admitting it was him, Cordell Hawkins, and Darnell Snell. He described how Cordell was driving and Darnell was on foot but froze up during the attack. Damien's confession implicated all three of them. Cordell and Darnell were also placed with undercover officers.
Over 25.
Darnell, who had indeed frozen up during the shooting, admitted to his cellmate that he didn't have the heart for it. He identified Damien as the one who followed through with the plan. On top of that, a dying Ashton Croswell told his friend Robert McGovern that it was Damien from Nickerson who did it. Robert initially told LAPD, but later in court he recanted, not wanting to be labeled a snitch. However, it was too late. The cops had already documented his statement. The moral of this
Cosby playing dirty.
This story, despite all the anti-snitching rhetoric in the music and the streets, people often talk when things get real. It seems like there should be an oath for those entering the street life where you accept all the consequences before jumping in. Many street guys have 1 foot in and 1 foot out, which puts everyone around them in danger. Either you're all in or you're not, and if you're not, don't hang around those who are. For example, Darnell Snell is probably a decent guy who just got caught up in his surroundings. In addition to their other crimes, the Grape Street Crips were involved in some seriously notorious activities, including a massive drug bust in 2014 that made headlines. Nearly 8 million doses of PCP were seized during the operation. Following this bust, federal authorities unsealed 2 indictments charging 40 individuals with ties to the Grape Street Crips. The charges were extensive, including possession and distribution of PCP, also known as angel dust, illegal possession of specific chemicals, maintaining properties involved in drug activities, and possession of firearms and furtherance of crimes. During this crackdown, 20 people were arrested. 3 were already in custody, and another 17 remained at large. It was a significant hit to the gang's operations. According to the indictment, Southern California had his...
Did y'all catch who was those 3 that looked yellow? Who were dealing the CP, or who manufactures and delivers the PCP?
Historically been the primary location in the United States for PCP manufacturing. Once manufactured, the drug was typically distributed within Southern California and to other regions across the country where it could be sold at higher prices for greater profit. The indictments and arrests were the culmination of a 6-year investigation that zeroed in on the Grape Street Crips' connections to PCP. U.S. Attorney Andre Barat Jr. stated, "Today's operation breaks the grip that these drug makers and dealers have held on the neighborhoods of Watts and South Los Angeles by targeting the highest levels of people."
Again, this is y'all fault. Y'all wouldn't let them out of that neighborhood so they couldn't get any good jobs. Y'all harassed them. Y'all tortured them. Y'all killed them. What choices do they have but to turn to the underworld to make their money? And 2024 is not an excuse. Back then, it definitely is. For sure.
PCP and those responsible for the manufacture and distribution of this deadly drug. Prosecutors accused the gang members of distributing angel dust through couriers and the mail to several states, including Texas, Maryland, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and New York. Authorities managed to seize about 100 gallons of PCP and its precursor chemicals, which equated to nearly 7.7 million doses. In addition to the arrest, the city attorney's office announced plans to seek injunctions aimed at curbing gang activity at 3 specific properties. 2 of these properties were located on the same block as an early education center and an elementary school. These properties were notorious for gang-related narcotic dealings, PCP manufacturing, possession of firearms, and other criminal activities. The scale of the operation was massive, and it showcased just how deeply entrenched the Grape Street Crips were in the drug trade. The bust sent shockwaves through the community, highlighting the ongoing struggle to combat gang influence in areas like Watts and South Los Angeles. This was not just a one-off event either. The Grape Street Crips had been involved in various criminal enterprises over the years, solidifying their reputation as a powerful and dangerous gang. Despite the arrests and seizures, the gang's influence and operations continued to be a significant concern for law enforcement and the community. Over the next few years, similar stories would unfold, but there was also positivity on both sides. Nickerson Gardens saw their own J-Rock rise to fame. He was featured on Kendrick Lamar's Best Album, and his career took off. His 2015 album, 90059, hit #1 on the hip-hop charts. For Grape Street, a new rapper named O3 Greedo emerged. His unique style and look grabbed national attention, especially with his hit song Mafia Business. This song was meant to be played at his close friend Raymond Arnold's funeral. Raymond was tragically shot in a barbershop on Crenshaw Boulevard on July 16, 2016 during an argument that escalated to violence. This loss devastated O3 Greedo, and the song was a tribute to Raymond and their last conversations. Just a few months later, O3 Greedo faced another heartbreak when he lost another close friend, Paul Reed, on 109th Street. 2016 was a rough year for him and Grape Street. However, on the bright side, Greedo dropped his mixtape Purple Summer, which elevated his career. Then he released his album First Day Out after posting bail. Greedo was on the move, making waves in the music scene, but trouble followed him. He was road running and got pulled over in Texas, a state known for its harsh legal system. Unlike in California, where he might have been out in no time, Texas was a different story. Greedo was sentenced to a whopping 20 years, which seemed absurd for someone who wasn't causing harm to anyone. Before he had to turn himself in, Greedo had a year of freedom. He decided to spend it in the studio, claiming he made 12 songs a night. This means he could be sitting on a treasure trove of unreleased albums. Although the violence in Watts has generally decreased over the years, the locals are still hard at work every day, trying to restore the area to the prominent section of Los Angeles it once was. However, the Grape Street Crips are still active with plenty of members, and they continue to make their presence felt even today. That's it for today. Until next time, bye.
On June 28th.
Alright, my beautiful people. That's it for number 1. I'll see y'all on the next one. Have a good day.